The sky has always been a patient witness. Above every city, village, and forgotten settlement, it stretches silently, carrying light and shadow across the contours of human endeavor. In its quiet presence, it holds memories that no photograph, blueprint, or storybook could fully capture. It remembers the rise and fall of buildings, the deliberate gestures of architects, and the unrecorded accidents of chance. Each stone laid by careful hands, each beam lifted into place by sweat and hope, leaves an imprint on the mind of the world, even if the structure itself crumbles into dust or is reclaimed by wind and rain. As you listen, allow yourself to feel the subtle dialogue between the earth and sky, between permanence and impermanence, between what is built and what lingers in absence. There is a rhythm in this dialogue, a cadence that can be felt in the spaces where walls no longer stand. Buildings, once animated by the presence of life, now exist in memory, in shadow, in the faint trace of their geometry in the landscape. Their corners and edges might no longer meet the eye, yet the air that passes through these vanished places carries a sense of their former shape. Imagine walking along a street where a home once stood, the pavement smooth beneath your feet, the echo of doors and windows lingering in your imagination. The sky above watches these absences as carefully as it watches the living, and in this quiet observation, it preserves the narrative of human aspiration and human decay alike. Consider how memory works in the human mind. The brain records, interprets, and reconstructs experience, often with an emphasis on emotion and significance rather than fact. Similarly, the world itself carries traces, subtle reminders of what was, in forms that we might not consciously recognize. Light falling at a particular angle, wind stirring over an uneven surface, the pattern of shadows in an alley. All can echo the existence of buildings that are no longer present. There is a poetry in this, a sense that the act of building leaves more than material behind. It leaves resonance, a vibration in the environment, a whisper that can be felt if one listens closely. In this first section, we also begin to explore the tension between memory and erasure. Every city, every neighborhood has places that were once alive with energy but have been silenced by time. The distinction between what is remembered and what is forgotten is never absolute. Some structures endure physically for centuries, while others vanish within a single generation. Yet the sky, the silent chronicler, remains, and in its expansive presence, it gathers fragments of both. It becomes a kind of mirror for human longing, reflecting not only what stands but what once stood and what might yet be imagined. The architectural forms that rise and fall are themselves expressions of human ambition. Towers stretch toward clouds, bridges span rivers, walls define and protect. When these forms disappear, it can feel as though a portion of the world's story has been erased. But if we attune ourselves to subtle evidence, the curve of a shadow, the pattern of vegetation reclaiming a yard, the uneven tilt of a surviving wall, we can begin to reconstruct the narrative. The sky provides the backdrop for this reconstruction, offering a canvas upon which the imagination paints what has been lost. And in this act of remembrance, there is a quiet intimacy, a gentle companionship between human consciousness and the enduring presence of the sky. As we begin to drift deeper into this contemplation, consider the emotional resonance of absence. There is a melancholy to witnessing what is gone, yet there is also a deep beauty. The impermanence of material existence invites reflection on what is essential, what is fleeting, and what endures. Every building, whether humble or grand, leaves behind not only traces in the earth, but also echoes in memory, in art, in the collective consciousness. These echoes, when attuned to, can bring a sense of continuity, a reminder that human life is intertwined with the landscapes we inhabit, even when the physical evidence of our presence fades. There is also a rhythmic quality to the act of observation. Walking past an empty lot where a home once stood, pausing at a corner where a market once thrived, one notices patterns of light and space. The cadence of recollection mirrors the cadence of the natural world, the slow passage of clouds, the gentle sway of trees, the subtle shift of wind. In this rhythm, the mind and body can find a meditative calm. Awareness of absence does not need to evoke sadness. It can be an invitation to appreciate the delicate balance between presence and void, between the visible and the remembered. The sky itself, ever-changing yet constant, embodies both motion and stillness. Clouds drift and reform, sunlight shifts, stars appear and vanish with the rotation of the earth. Within this vast, dynamic canvas, human constructions are momentary, but the impressions they leave ripple outward. Each structure interacts with the sky, casting shadows, interrupting light, shaping patterns that extend far beyond its physical boundaries. Even in disappearance, buildings continue to influence the environment in ways subtle and profound, reminding us that existence is not solely defined by permanence, but by interaction, influence, and memory. Finally, as this section draws to a close, allow your attention to settle on the gentle dialogue between the observer, the vanished structure, and the sky above. Imagine the stories the sky holds: the rise of a spire, the collapse of a roof, the quiet passage of human life through a courtyard now gone. Each moment of observation is an act of participation in this memory. By noticing the absent alongside the present, we awaken a deeper sense of connection to both the temporal world and the eternal witness above. The sky does not hurry. It does not judge. It simply remembers. And in this act of remembrance, it offers a calm, reflective space for the mind to rest, for the imagination to wander, and for the heart to dwell in quiet wonder. Beneath every structure, beneath every foundation, time quietly begins its slow reclamation. The earth is patient, indifferent, yet profoundly alive, absorbing and transforming what humans leave behind. In this section, we explore how buildings, once symbols of permanence, are gradually returned to the soil and air from which they emerged. Through erosion, water seepage, plant growth, and shifting ground, each construction becomes a part of the natural cycle. There is a paradox here. The more permanent something feels when it is built, the more dramatically it can dissolve. Yet, even in dissolution, there is a subtle beauty, a testimony to the resilience of memory embedded in place. Consider stone walls, carefully arranged, strong against wind and rain. Over decades, rainwater seeps into fissures, expanding as it freezes and contracts, splitting rock into fragments. Soil settles unevenly, roots twist and pry apart the masonry. In some places, seeds carried by wind or bird take root in cracks, their growth both destructive and restorative, weaving new life into decaying stone. Even metal corrodes, oxidizing in patterns that catch the light, leaving lace-like scars on structures that were once solid. These processes are quiet, almost imperceptible, yet relentless, a reminder that no human effort can fully escape the passage of time. Water is perhaps the most patient sculptor. Rain flows over roofs, down gutters, and into the foundations, carrying microscopic particles of brick, mortar, and stone into the soil. Rivers and streams shape and reshape urban and rural landscapes alike. Floods can erase entire neighborhoods in a single season. Yet in their wake, sediment carries the faint imprint of streets, walls, and walkways, creating a subtle map of what once existed. There is a strange poetry in this duality. Destruction and preservation occur simultaneously, each act of forgetting embedding evidence for those who know how to read it. Wind, too, is an archivist of absence. It moves dust across open lots, filling hollow corners and smoothing jagged edges. Sand and grit abrade surfaces over time, polishing and eroding in equal measure. Empty courtyards carry the sound of passing air differently, resonating with echoes that hint at previous activity. These invisible forces shape the world in ways humans rarely notice, leaving subtle reminders of presence where there is only absence. They are gentle, yet unstoppable, a quiet chorus of natural memory. Even plant life participates in this slow process. Moss spreads across brick, softening sharp corners. Ivy climbs walls long after they are abandoned, tracing lines once defined by human intention. Roots pry apart foundations and disrupt pavements, yet they also hold soil in place, preventing the land from erasing history entirely. Trees may grow from forgotten lots, their rings silently recording years, seasons, and climatic changes alongside human absence. Nature both consumes and protects, folding the old into the ongoing narrative of life. In the mind, forgetting operates differently than in soil or stone. Memory is selective, sometimes unreliable, sometimes idealized. We forget details but retain impressions. The feeling of walking through a sunlit courtyard, the weight of a door in our hand, the sound of laughter echoing in a hallway. Foundations of forgetting, in this sense, are not just physical but emotional and cultural. We reconstruct the vanished through fragments, through stories passed down, through the collective imagination of communities. And often, what we remember is as much shaped by longing as by fact, giving absence a tangible, almost physical presence in the mind. Philosophically, this interplay between natural decay and human memory invites reflection on impermanence. The grandest edifices, built to defy time, are eventually softened by the elements. The humblest hut may vanish without trace, yet the ephemeral nature of structures does not diminish their significance. Rather, it highlights the transient beauty of human endeavor, the fragility that makes creation remarkable. Time, in its inexorable patience, transforms pride into grace, permanence into suggestion, absence into quiet poetry. The contrast between what endures and what disappears can also teach a form of mindful observation. When walking past ruins, empty plots, or streets that have changed beyond recognition, we are invited to slow down, notice subtle shifts, and recognize the traces that persist. We learn to see erosion not as loss alone, but as a process that shapes experience and perception. The foundations of forgetting, whether literal or metaphorical, are not simply spaces of emptiness. They are active sites where history, nature, and imagination converge. In this reflective state, one begins to sense the intimate partnership between human creation and natural reclamation. Buildings rise, imbued with hope and purpose. The earth gradually returns them to its fold. In the spaces left behind, there is room for memory, for imagination, and for the quiet contemplation that encourages restful awareness. Time is both sculptor and storyteller, recording absence as surely as presence, allowing us to recognize the impermanence of matter while attuning to the lasting imprint of human endeavor on the world. As the listener drifts deeper into contemplation, the realization emerges that forgetting is not simply a loss, it is a transformation. The foundations that crumble support new growth. The walls that fall invite imagination to rebuild in the mind. This gentle rhythm, the the constant ebb and flow between presence and absence, prepares the mind for rest. It is an invitation to observe without urgency, to feel without grasping, and to allow the quiet persistence of memory to resonate alongside the inexorable calm of natural processes. Even after walls fall and rooftops cave, the echoes of human craft linger in the materials themselves. Steel beams, once rigid and proud, slowly bend and rust, leaving patterns that speak of the forces they once resisted. Bricks, painstakingly laid in careful sequences, fracture and weather, yet retain the memory of the order and intention behind them. Wood, porous and vulnerable, darkens and softens under rain and sunlight, recording in its grain both construction and decay. In this section, we explore how the physical traces of architecture carry stories beyond the lifespan of the structures themselves, whispering reminders of human presence long after life has moved on. Consider steel as a witness to impermanence. Though forged for strength, it surrenders eventually to oxygen and moisture, oxidizing into fragile lacework. Rust forms slowly, intricately, revealing not just chemical processes, but the weight of history itself. Where a beam once bore the stress of roof and floor, corrosion now traces a map of endurance and surrender. These patterns are not chaotic. They are shaped by gravity, temperature, and the invisible tug of forces acting over decades. Each mark tells a story, a chronicle of the interaction between human design and elemental persistence. Bricks similarly hold memory in their fractures and discoloration. Mortar softens, edges crumble, and surfaces are etched with patterns left by wind, rain, and passing footsteps. Yet, even in disintegration, bricks retain evidence of their assembly. The sequence of walls, the careful spacing, the alignment with light and air. These echoes in material form are a language of presence, allowing us to reconstruct, in imagination, the shape and function of spaces that no longer exist. There is poetry in this permanence within impermanence, an ongoing dialogue between human intention and natural intervention. Wood, organic and receptive, records time in a way that stone and steel cannot. Beams warp and splinter, planks darken, and the grain becomes a chronicle of seasons and cycles. Rain leaves its mark in soft stains. Sunlight imprints subtle warmth and fade. Insects and fungi may hollow sections, yet even in consumption, they add to the narrative of transformation. The material itself, responsive to environmental pressures, is a living record of the passage of years, a testament to the transient nature of human construction and the enduring presence of matter in motion. This section also examines the subtle intersections of sound and material. Hollow walls, creaking floors, and shifting beams once amplified voices, footsteps, and movement. When the structure falls silent, these materials retain the memory of vibration. Echoes are not only in air, but in substance. Steel hums faintly with stress, brick murmurs under the weight of rain, and wood sighs as it bends. Listening to these traces, even imaginatively, is a form of meditation, an attunement to the lingering presence of human activity encoded in the matter around us. The philosophical resonance of these echoes is profound. In the natural world, permanence is an illusion. Everything changes, erodes, and transforms. Yet, within this flux, traces endure, allowing memory and imagination to reconstruct what was lost. By attending to the physical residues of architecture, we recognize a continuity that bridges human creativity and natural law. In steel and brick, we find both fragility and resilience, absence and presence coexisting. These materials, in decay, offer a gentle reflection on our own temporality, a reminder that influence can outlast form. Even the smallest details, an iron hinge, a chipped corner of masonry, a warped window frame, carry narrative weight. They are fingerprints of intention, labor, and choice. As walls crumble, these details become more pronounced, signaling not only the passage of time, but the intricate care embedded in creation. Each fragment, though detached from the whole, offers a window into the lived experience of those who once inhabited these spaces, allowing us to reconstruct stories of everyday life with quiet reverence. In observing these echoes, we are invited into a meditative rhythm. Our attention slows to notice subtle textures, gentle curves, and the interplay of light on corroded surfaces. Awareness of decay becomes an exercise in patience and reflection, offering a way to appreciate impermanence without anxiety. The world, in its quiet reclamation of steel and brick, teaches us to find beauty in transformation, to dwell in the spaces between construction and collapse, presence and absence. By the end of this section, listeners are gently guided to sense the ongoing conversation between human craft and elemental forces. Steel bends, bricks crumble, wood softens, but each acts as a repository of memory, a vessel for echoes that endure beyond their functional lifespan. In these materials, we find a subtle poetic reminder that, though human structures may not last forever, their essence, their echoes, and the care embedded in their creation persist in the quiet testimony of the world. Above all human constructions, the sky stretches wide, a quiet observer of what rises and falls beneath it. Clouds drift across this expanse, shifting and dissolving. Yet, in their movement, they carry traces of everything they witness. In this section, we explore the idea that clouds, through their fleeting forms and subtle interplay with light, act as chroniclers of absence. Just as memory preserves the outline of a building no longer standing, clouds reflect, refract, and mirror the contours of vanished structures, offering a gentle, poetic record of impermanence in motion. Consider how a cloud moves across the sky, shaped by winds and temperature gradients, morphing slowly yet ceaselessly. Its form can evoke a distant memory, a spire, a tower, the slant of a roof, even when the physical structure has long vanished. Light interacts with the cloud in infinite variations, scattering and bending around its edges, creating ephemeral reflections of shapes that no longer exist. To watch clouds in this way is to engage with a soft, meditative form of recollection, where the imagination bridges the gap between presence and absence. The sky does more than frame memory, it participates in it. Shadows of clouds fall upon the earth, tracing contours over empty streets and vacant lots, subtly accentuating voids left by human construction. This interplay between aerial light and terrestrial absence allows the mind to reconstruct, with imagination as its tool, the forms of buildings that once shaped a landscape. Even the color of the sky, dusky blues, fiery oranges, muted grays, affects perception, lending mood and weight to the imagined silhouettes of vanished spaces. In this way, the sky becomes a living archive, recording not in ink or stone, but in ephemeral patterns of light, moisture, and motion. Clouds also carry the weight of human imagination. For centuries, People have looked upward and interpreted forms in the sky, creating narratives from shape and pattern. Similarly, when a building disappears, it survives in stories, sketches, and memory. The sky mirrors this process naturally. It absorbs and reshapes images of the world, leaving room for interpretation and reflection. As the listener tunes into this rhythm, there is a sense of connection between human cognition and atmospheric motion, a quiet acknowledgement that memory and nature often speak in parallel languages. Rain-laden clouds, in particular, participate in the cycle of remembering and erasing. Rain nourishes vegetation that reclaims abandoned lots, softens the edges of decayed masonry, and washes the traces of human construction into soil and riverbeds. Each droplet carries with it the memory of cloud's passage, the subtle imprint of the sky's observation on the earth below. Through this gentle process, clouds both preserve and transform history, allowing the ephemeral to leave enduring traces even in absence. There is also a poetic tension inherent in clouds. As chroniclers, they are ever-changing, never fixed, yet they embody continuity. Today's cloud may suggest the outline of a cathedral long gone. Tomorrow, it will dissolve, replaced by a new formation. In the impermanence of clouds, we see a reflection of the impermanence of human construction, and in their fleeting forms, a quiet meditation on the nature of memory itself. To watch clouds is to observe the dialogue between presence and loss, form and dissolution, imagination and reality. Beyond visual traces, clouds also influence perception through light and shadow, transforming the earth beneath them into a landscape of subtle contrasts. Sunlight, filtered through a shifting cloudscape, may illuminate a wall differently than ever before, or cast patterns over vacant streets that evoke the geometry of lost structures. This interplay invites slow attention, encouraging the listener to notice absence without anxiety, to perceive voids as carriers of story rather than emptiness. It is a gentle exercise in mindful reflection, aligning thought with the gradual, natural rhythms of the sky. By the end of this section, listeners are invited to sense clouds as living witnesses, chroniclers of the ephemeral and the absent. They carry the memory of human endeavor and motion, reflecting vanished forms and inviting quiet contemplation. In their patterns, shifts, and dissolutions, clouds offer both solace and wonder, a reminder that even when structures fall and streets empty, the sky retains their echoes, and the mind, attuned to observation, can perceive them in subtle, meditative detail. Beneath every modern street, beneath asphalt and pavement, lie the skeletons of past cities, quietly preserved in layers of soil, rubble, and memory. These remnants are not always visible to the eye, yet they persist in subtle traces, a fragment of pottery, a worn stone, the outline of a long-buried wall. In this section, we journey beneath the surface, imagining the hidden structures that endure in quiet persistence, where time and earth have become custodians of human history. Archaeology and geology reveal how spaces once bustling with life continue to echo in absence, reminding us that beneath what is visible, the past remains present. The sediment of centuries carries stories of construction, habitation, and abandonment. Every street we walk on may overlay the foundations of houses, markets, or public squares that disappeared long before our own time. Soil layers build up gradually, filling voids and preserving shapes. Tiny particles record the weight of footsteps, the movement of carts, and the presence of those who lived, worked, and loved in these spaces. In this quiet accumulation, the earth itself becomes a memory bank, storing impressions of human activity in ways both physical and symbolic. Consider the traces left by forgotten walls. Though the bricks and stones may have long since crumbled, the soil often retains subtle patterns, compacted earth, shifts in mineral composition, or depressions marking the course of streets. Roots and vegetation follow these contours, creating gentle undulations across parks and lots that hint at past geometry. Even modern construction often respects, unknowingly, these ancient forms as builders encounter unexpected resistance or discovery, revealing that the city itself remembers beneath layers of time what once was. Archaeology then becomes a dialogue between human curiosity and Earth's memory. Each excavation uncovers fragments of life, shards of ceramic, remnants of tools, worn coins, inscriptions partially erased. These small traces carry enormous weight, inviting reflection on the lives and stories embedded in vanished spaces. They reveal continuity as well as loss, showing how civilizations build, flourish, and disappear, yet leave faint signatures for those willing to listen closely. The city beneath our feet is not empty. It hums softly with these echoes of existence. Time, as recorded in Earth, has a rhythm unlike the human scale. Layers of sediment accumulate over decades, centuries, and millennia, burying once prominent streets and buildings. Floods may deposit fine silt, fires may leave charred layers, and human activity continues to mix and reshape what is below. The deeper one goes, the more distant the memories become, yet they remain tangible, like faint pulses beneath the skin of the city. This vertical dimension of memory, strata upon strata of human life, offers a meditation on perspective, on how the passage of time both conceals and preserves. The philosophical weight of these buried structures is profound. Beneath every present moment lies a foundation of the past, often invisible but always shaping what emerges above. The idea that streets, courtyards, and homes continue to exist in hidden layers invites reflection on impermanence and continuity. Buildings above may crumble, but below, fragments remain, suggesting that memory is neither lost nor fully intact but exists in a form that can be rediscovered, reconstructed, and honored. There is solace in this subterranean continuity, a quiet reassurance that human life leaves enduring marks even when invisible to casual observation. Consider the tactile dimension of this memory. Archaeologists brush away soil, uncover delicate edges of brick and stone, and reveal the faint architecture of life long gone. Each careful gesture echoes the reverence inherent in observing absence. In our imagination, we can follow these traces, walking along streets now hidden, hearing the echoes of footsteps, imagining the sounds of commerce, conversation, and daily life. The city beneath our feet becomes a place of gentle meditation, a space where absence is transformed into presence through attention and imagination. Even natural forces play a role in preserving these skeletons. Layers of sediment can shield delicate structures from wind, rain, and human interference. Underground water may flow around foundations, leaving mineral deposits that trace original shapes. Roots may stabilize or disrupt, creating subtle distortions that add character and narrative to buried spaces. These interactions remind us that memory is not fixed. It is dynamic, influenced by both natural processes and human activity, continuously shaped and reshaped across time. In this contemplation, listeners are invited to sense the hidden city as a living, breathing archive. Footsteps above may seem isolated, but they resonate in layers of history beneath. The ground is not passive. It responds, remembers, and subtly communicates. Even a park or an empty lot carries hints of previous structures, suggesting stories that once unfolded and now continue in imagination. The city beneath our feet is a testament to endurance, a quiet chronicle that asks only for careful attention and reflective observation. As this section draws to a close, we are encouraged to consider the profound intimacy of subterranean memory. Beneath every path we walk, beneath every garden or street corner, the past persists in sediment, stone, and root. Time is both sculptor and keeper, and we are invited to dwell in awareness of its patient work. By sensing these city skeletons, even in thought, the mind attunes to continuity and impermanence, to the invisible threads that connect present life to vanished worlds. In this meditative state, we become participants in memory itself, walking softly, listening closely, and allowing the quiet depth of human history beneath our feet to resonate gently in consciousness. Light carries memory in ways that are subtle and profound. Even after a building has vanished, sunlight and shadow trace its former presence across streets, walls, and open spaces. In this section, we explore the meditative interplay of illumination and absence, how reflections on surfaces, puddles, windows, polished stone, hint at shapes no longer standing. Light does not merely reveal, it reconstructs, suggesting outlines, edges, and forms, allowing the mind to perceive what is gone. It transforms empty. Imagine standing where a courtyard once flourished. The sun slants across the ground, casting long, angled shadows from surviving walls or nearby trees. These shadows, fractured and shifting, evoke geometry of the vanished structures, the lines of doorways, the rhythm of arches, the spacing of pillars. Even in the absence of brick and timber, light sketches a ghostly map, gently reminding the observer of what once existed. This subtle interaction between illumination and form encourages slow awareness. Amen. Reflections extend this poetic effect. A puddle may mirror a fragment of sky, yet in its surface, one can imagine the faint trace of a roofline or window that no longer exists. Glass panes in nearby buildings catch and bend light in fleeting ways, producing glimmers that hint at vanished geometry. The mind naturally completes these impressions, reconstructing buildings from the smallest cues. In this act of quiet imagination, absence becomes active. The mind participates in memory, weaving together what? The science of perception intertwines with poetry here. Human vision is attuned to recognize patterns and anticipate form. Shadows falling at unusual angles can evoke structures, walls, and corners that are not physically present. Light, in its constant motion across the landscape, provides an ongoing rehearsal of memory. Dawn, midday, dusk. Each moment reshapes the suggestion of what once stood. This continuous transformation mirrors the fluidity of recollection itself, reinforcing the idea that memory is. Reflections of light also carry emotional weight. Sunlight filtering through a tree onto an empty lot can evoke warmth, nostalgia, or melancholy, depending on the observer's awareness. Shadows deepen a sense of quiet contemplation, encouraging the mind to dwell in the gentle rhythm of change. In noticing these phenomena, one experiences both the impermanence of physical structures and the endurance of their echo, an invitation to rest in the interplay of presence and absence. Even minor details, like the glint of metal on a discarded hinge, the soft shimmer of water in a forgotten basin, or the interplay of light on uneven pavement, can evoke the shape and spirit of buildings long gone. These traces, subtle and often overlooked, are reminders that the world holds memory in unexpected ways. Light does not simply illuminate, it participates in recollection, enabling the mind to perceive continuity where matter has decayed. By the end of this section, the listener is invited to sense light as both archivist and storyteller. Shadows, reflections, and the gentle movement of illumination across empty spaces allow the mind to trace the architecture of memory. Even in absence, light reconstructs presence, offering a meditative space in which to observe, imagine, and gently let go. Through this reflection, both literal and metaphorical, we find a rhythm of awareness that prepares the mind for restful contemplation and a deeper attitude. Even after walls crumble and rooftops vanish, the geometry of buildings endures. Lines, angles, and proportions leave subtle marks on the world, suggesting structure where none physically remains. In this section, we explore how the underlying patterns of human design, whether deliberate or instinctive, persist in memory, landscape, and imagination. These geometric echoes are ghosts of the past, shaping perception and experience long after the original construction has disappeared. By attuning to them, the mind senses continuity, a delicate resonance between form, space, and recollection. Geometry, at its essence, is both a language and a framework for human thought. Towers rise according to principles of balance. Arches distribute weight with careful symmetry. Streets align along imagined grids. When buildings fall, these principles leave traces in the surrounding environment. Faint depressions in earth, uneven vegetation, or patterns in surviving foundations. Even in ruins, corners and angles recall the intentions of their creators. The mind, attuned to pattern recognition, perceives these echoes, completing the absent structures in thought. In this way, geometry becomes a bridge between the tangible and the remembered. Consider the rhythm of repeated forms. Rows of windows, arches, and columns, even when partially destroyed, create a cadence the eye and mind recognize. Shadows reinforce this rhythm, extending the geometry into ephemeral, shifting patterns. The repetition, spacing, and alignment evoke a sense of coherence, a subtle echo of the building's original design. These patterns persist not only in perception, but in the way spaces are used. Streets, courtyards, and plazas maintain traces of prior layouts, influencing movement, orientation, and imagination. Even abstractly, geometry holds memory. A triangular roofline, a circular courtyard, or a rectangular foundation carries information about human habitation. These forms hint at function, purpose, and aesthetic choices, allowing observers to reconstruct not just physical appearance, but the spirit of activity that once occurred. In doing so, we encounter a quiet, reflective form of storytelling. The building communicates through proportion, symmetry, and spatial resonance, leaving behind a narrative encoded in angles and planes. The interplay of geometry and perception is intensified by absence. Where a wall has fallen or a floor has collapsed, the void itself defines shape. Negative space becomes as informative as presence. A missing spire draws the eye upward, suggesting height and scale. An empty lot recalls the rhythm of a street or the curve of a plaza. In this way, human cognition participates actively in remembrance, sensing structure in absence and engaging with the spatial ghosts of architecture. The mind becomes an extension of the building's memory, completing what the physical world can no longer fully express. There is also an emotional resonance in these geometric ghosts. Symmetry and proportion can evoke calm, while jagged or irregular patterns can convey disruption and loss. The mind, attuned to these subtle cues, experiences presence in absence, continuity in discontinuity. Observing these forms is a meditative practice. Noticing angles, following lines into space, and tracing the contours of vanished architecture fosters a sense of connection to the past and a gentle awareness of impermanence. Patterns in geometry often outlive even the materials of construction. Surviving foundations, sunken outlines, and subtle shifts in the landscape act as guides for reconstruction and imagination. Even in modern developments, older geometric frameworks may subtly influence new construction. Streets align with former grids, building footprints echo older proportions, and public spaces follow the flow of vanished courtyards. The ghosts of geometry persist across time, shaping both perception and the evolution of the built environment. Finally, this meditation on geometric memory invites reflection on the broader human impulse to create, organize, and structure space. Our desire to build is inseparable from our need to impose order, to align with principles of symmetry and proportion, and to leave traces that outlast our individual lives. Even when structures decay, the underlying geometry preserves intention, thought, and imagination. These ghosts are quiet but persistent witnesses, bridging centuries, connecting vanished communities with those who observe and remember. By the end of this section, listeners are guided to sense the invisible lines and forms that linger in space, even after construction has ceased. Geometry becomes both archive and medium, a subtle echo of presence and absence. It encourages the mind to perceive continuity, to dwell in proportion, and to recognize that, even when buildings vanish, their structural essence endures. In this reflection, the audience finds a meditative rhythm, a calm awareness of the persistent dialogue between human design, memory, and the enduring spaces that carry the ghosts of our architectural past. Every material that composes a building holds a quiet record of its own past. Stone, timber, metal, and clay are more than mere matter. They are witnesses, chroniclers, and participants in the lives of structures. In this section, we explore how these materials themselves carry memory, preserving traces of human intention, environmental interaction, and the passage of time. Even as buildings vanish, their constituent matter continues to resonate, offering a tactile and poetic form of remembrance that transcends visible form. Stone, ancient and enduring, absorbs history. Each block cut and placed carries the weight of hands, hammers, and chisels. Weathering, erosion, and the slow accumulation of moss and lichen transform the surface over time, recording cycles of sun, rain, wind, and human activity. Cracks and fissures capture energy and motion, the expansion of water as it freezes, the pressure of roots, the subtle vibrations of footsteps above. Stone holds memory not as narrative text, but as layered impressions, a quiet archive of labor and passage that persists long after the structure itself has dissolved. Timber, by contrast, is porous, responsive, and intimate. Its grain captures sunlight, moisture, and temperature variations. Each knot, each split, is a trace of growth and environment, yet also a record of human shaping. Beams once bearing roofs and floors still carry echoes of weight, stress, and use. As wood bends, darkens, or decays, it communicates subtle information about the rhythms of construction, the seasons it endured, and the patterns of life that once intersected with it. Even as it returns to soil, timber continues to influence the land, nourishing future growth while preserving its own quiet history. Metal holds memory in a different way, through resistance, tension, and transformation. Steel beams, iron railings, and copper roofing bend, warp, and oxidize, recording environmental stress and the forces they have supported. Rust develops slowly, intricately tracing the interaction between human design and elemental persistence. Metals may creak under stress or hum faintly as the wind passes, subtle vibrations that encode the weight and movement of the structure they once formed. In their corrosion and decay, metals reveal a narrative of endurance and surrender, offering a meditative sense of presence even in absence. Even clay and mortar, often overlooked, retain traces of human craftsmanship. Mortar softens over decades, yet it records the pattern and order of brickwork, the alignment of walls, and the intention of the builder. Clay tiles, fired and glazed, capture temperature, pressure, and handling in minute ways. Their surfaces may crack or discolor, But these changes are also part of their memory, a dialogue between human shaping and the forces of nature. Materials, in this sense, are not passive. They act as intermediaries between the tangible and the imagined, between the building as it was and the building as it is remembered. Environmental interaction deepens this memory. Stone darkens under water and sunlight. Timber absorbs rain, wind, and heat. Metals corrode in response to air and moisture. In every weathering process, there is a story of storms endured, fires survived, seasons witnessed. Even human interaction, touch, movement, repair, leaves imperceptible traces, creating a layered archive of experience. Materials record not only structural history but also the human rhythms of life. Footsteps along corridors, hands on doors, the pressure of furniture and movement. In this, material memory becomes an intimate reflection of lived experience, echoing the invisible past. Philosophically, this invites reflection on permanence and impermanence. Buildings may crumble, roofs may collapse, walls may fall, yet the matter itself retains traces. Memory, then, is not bound solely to form, but exists in substance. It is in the texture of stone, the warp of wood, the corrosion of metal. Even disassembled, scattered, or buried, these materials hold echoes that the imagination can reconstruct, allowing absent structures to continue speaking to the present. There is also an emotional resonance in the material memory. Stone that has supported generations carries a weight of human endurance. Timber that has borne footsteps and laughter carries warmth. Metal that has resisted storm and stress bears testament to resilience. By attuning to these subtle presences, we engage in a meditative practice, noticing the material traces of existence without urgency, feeling the layered history beneath our perception, and letting memory unfold gently in consciousness. Even when a building is gone, its sound lingers. Empty streets, abandoned courtyards, and collapsed halls carry acoustic traces of human activity. In this section, we explore how the auditory memory of spaces, echoes, vibrations, and silences preserves the presence of structures and the lives they contained. Sound is subtle, fleeting, and often overlooked, yet it is profoundly evocative, allowing us to perceive and reconstruct spaces long after they have disappeared. Through attentive listening, absence transforms into a gentle resonance of memory. Architecture is inherently acoustic. High ceilings, archways, and corridors are designed not only for structure but for sound, footsteps, voices, and the rhythm of daily life. When these structures decay or vanish, the residual properties of space continue to shape sound. An empty hall may carry a low, lingering hum as wind passes through gaps. An abandoned courtyard may amplify distant noises, creating the impression of a larger presence. These acoustic imprints become subtle reminders of the structure's former form and function. Silence itself is a form of sound memory. In spaces once filled with chatter, laughter, and mechanical noise, quietness carries its own weight. The absence of sound accentuates awareness, inviting the mind to recall what once was. A vacant lot, a collapsed building, or a dismantled street may appear empty, yet the silence resonates with imagined footsteps, conversations, and activity. Listening to absence is a meditative act, a gentle invitation to inhabit memory rather than material form. Vibrations offer another layer of auditory trace. Timber floors, metal beams, and stone foundations all retain subtle resonances long after they cease to function. The wind, rain, or passing footsteps may excite these materials, producing faint sounds that echo the past. Even rubble and soil transmit vibrations, registering the passage of movement above or nearby. By attuning attention to these subtle cues, the mind begins to perceive the ongoing dialogue between material space and memory. The echoes of sound are often shaped by geometry. Vaulted ceilings, arches, and corridors create resonances that persist in imagination, even when the original structure is gone. A whisper along a long-lost hallway, the fading hum of a city square, or the rustle of wind through a collapsed roof can evoke the scale, proportions, and rhythm of vanished spaces. In this way, auditory memory complements visual and tactile traces, offering a more immersive sense of absence as presence. Sound is also temporal. Acoustic memory captures movement and activity over time, layering one moment upon another. Even when structures disappear, their sonic imprint lingers, footsteps long past, the rhythm of doors opening and closing, the murmur of conversation now silent. The mind reconstructs these patterns, filling voids with echoes that carry narrative, emotion, and atmosphere. In this, sound acts as a bridge between human perception and the enduring qualities of space. Natural elements further enhance acoustic memory. Wind whistling through gaps, rain dripping on broken tiles, and rustling leaves in abandoned courtyards interact with remaining materials to create ephemeral symphonies. Each sound carries subtle hints of what once existed: the height of walls, the spacing of columns, the orientation of roofs. Attuning to these natural acoustics allows for a meditative awareness of place, revealing history encoded not in stone or brick alone, but in the way space interacts with air, water, and movement. Philosophically, the sound of spaces reminds us that memory is multisensory. We often rely on sight to reconstruct absence, yet sound carries nuances that visual cues cannot convey. The scale of a room, the texture of surfaces, the rhythm of life. Listening becomes an act of participation, an immersive meditation in which the listener inhabits past spaces through vibration, resonance, and attentive imagination. In this practice, absence is neither void nor loss. It is an active presence, subtle and enduring. By the end of this section, listeners are invited to inhabit the acoustic dimension of vanished architecture. Echoes, vibrations, and silence combine to reconstruct spaces that no longer stand. Footsteps, voices, and natural interactions with materials leave subtle traces that awaken memory, imagination, and quiet reflection. The sound of spaces becomes a gentle guide, encouraging meditative attention and a deeper sense of connection to human history, presence, and impermanence. Even as walls crumble and rooftops disappear, these sonic imprints allow the mind to hear the life that once filled these places, resonating softly in the quiet spaces of thought. Wind carries memory in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. As it moves across streets, courtyards, and ruins, it interacts with materials, echoing past presence and animating spaces long abandoned. In this section, we explore how wind functions as both messenger and sculptor, tracing vanished forms, carrying sound and scent, and leaving gentle impressions that awaken imagination. It is a quiet medium through which absence becomes presence, and memory moves freely across time and space. Consider wind passing through a collapsed corridor or between ruins. It rustles debris, bends grass, and lifts dust into gentle currents, tracing the contours of walls that once stood. In its motion, the wind maps the architecture of absence, outlining spaces where bricks have fallen and beams have collapsed. Each gust is a reminder of structure and void, of human creation and the elements that reclaim it. By observing or imagining these subtle movements, the mind begins to perceive the lingering shape of buildings that no longer exist. Whispers carried on the wind evoke traces of human activity. The faint clatter of a loose shutter, the soft rattling of debris, even the echo of distant voices imagined in memory, all are amplified by moving air. Wind acts as an intermediary between the physical and the imagined, connecting material remnants to perception and memory. Listening to these ephemeral sounds allows the mind to inhabit vanished spaces, reconstructing form and presence from the subtlest cues. Wind also shapes the physical world over time, subtly sculpting ruins and landscapes. It erodes stone, polishes surfaces, shifts sand, and moves leaves and dust into patterns that echo past activity. In this slow, patient process, natural forces become collaborators in memory preservation. The interplay of wind and material traces creates ever-changing impressions, so that even in absence, the world is dynamic, alive with subtle reminders of the structures that once shaped it. Scent and temperature carried by wind further enrich its mnemonic power. A sudden gust may bring the earthy aroma of moss or wet stone, evoking the presence of walls and courtyards long since vanished. Warm air may suggest the sunlit surfaces of fallen roofs, while a cool breeze whispers of shadows and hidden spaces. These sensory impressions intertwine with imagination, deepening reflection and fostering a meditative awareness of the environment and its layered history. Wind embodies impermanence and continuity simultaneously. It moves freely, never fixed, yet it traces the past with gentle persistence. Just as a gust shifts along the contours of ruins, human memory traces the outlines of structures and experiences that are no longer tangible. By attuning to this rhythm, the listener experiences a gentle synchronization with the environment, aligning perception with the natural flow of space and time. The wind, in this sense, becomes an instrument of reflection, encouraging a calm, contemplative state of mind. In urban ruins, wind interacts uniquely with remaining structures. Narrow streets channel its flow, courtyards amplify its passage, and fractured walls scatter it in unpredictable patterns. These interactions create a layered tapestry of movement and sound, subtle yet evocative, revealing the persistence of human design even in its absence. Through this interplay, the listener can imagine the contours of lost buildings and sense the echoes of lives that once moved within these spaces. By the end of this section, listeners are invited to sense the wind as a gentle storyteller, carrying memory through movement, sound, and sensation. Its whispers trace vanished structures, awaken imagination, and remind the mind of impermanence, resilience, and continuity. In the quiet, attentive observation of wind, absence becomes presence, and the memory of buildings that no longer stand is carried across space, softly, endlessly, in the gentle rhythm of nature. Rain carries memory through its touch, sound, and movement. As it falls on streets, rooftops, and ruins, it interacts with materials, leaving traces that both preserve and transform the past. In this section, we explore rain as a gentle chronicler, a medium through which the memory of vanished buildings and lives persists. Water records what remains and shapes what is forgotten, merging impermanence with continuity and inviting quiet reflection on the delicate dialogue between human creation and natural cycles. Consider the first drops of rain on an abandoned courtyard. They collect in depressions left by collapsed walls, forming miniature pools that trace the former geometry of buildings. Each droplet resonates with material memory, accentuating textures of stone, metal, and timber. As rain trickles along fractured surfaces, it reveals hidden contours, highlighting edges that might otherwise go unnoticed. In this gentle process, absence is illuminated, and the mind begins to reconstruct vanished spaces through observation and imagination. Rain also interacts with sound in evocative ways. The patter of drops on remaining rooftops, cobblestones, or debris-filled streets produces a subtle rhythm reminiscent of footsteps, conversation, or movement once present. In listening to this delicate music, one can sense the echoes of life that once animated these spaces. Even when buildings have disappeared, the cadence of falling water carries a resonance of human presence, inviting meditation and attentive awareness. The transformative power of rain extends to materials themselves. Stone darkens, timber swells and softens, metals glisten or oxidize more rapidly, and soil absorbs water, altering its texture and color. These changes are not merely physical. They encode the passage of time and the interaction of natural forces with human structures. Rain leaves a temporary imprint, visible only for a moment before evaporating or flowing away, mirroring the fleeting nature of memory while emphasizing the persistence of its traces. Water also reveals hidden histories. Patterns of erosion, stains, and channels created by repeated rainfall can hint at past forms. The course of a wall, the outline of a courtyard, or the shape of a roofline. By observing these subtle signs, the mind reconstructs architectural geometry, movement, and activity. Rain becomes a medium of perception, translating imperceptible remnants into a narrative of presence and absence, guiding contemplation of spaces long lost. Philosophically, rain embodies cycles of remembering and erasing. As water nourishes vegetation that reclaims abandoned lots, it softens and transforms ruins, blending human creation with natural processes. In doing so, it emphasizes impermanence while allowing memory to persist in evolving forms. Rain invites reflection on how the past continues to shape the present, even when direct evidence has disappeared. Through water, absence is never complete, and the mind can engage with layered histories in a calm, meditative way. Rain also evokes emotional resonance. The gentle sound of a soft drizzle can evoke nostalgia, melancholy, or peaceful reflection. Torrential downpours may amplify a sense of drama or evoke the passage of time and endurance. In each case, the observer is drawn into a meditative awareness, attuning to subtle rhythms, textures, and changes in the environment. Rain, in its gentle persistence, mirrors the process of memory itself, quiet, fluid, and ever-transforming. Even the evaporation of water carries meaning. As puddles and streams disappear, they leave traces in the form of darker stone, damp soil, or faint patterns in debris. These ephemeral marks echo the fleeting presence of buildings, reminding the mind that absence is not emptiness, but a field of subtle traces awaiting attention. Rain's interaction with materials, light, and air becomes a meditation on transience, encouraging reflective observation and gentle attunement to the world's quiet continuity. By the end of this section, listeners are invited to sense rain as an active participant in memory. Each drop traces past forms, interacts with materials, and evokes echoes of life once present. Rain does not merely fall. It preserves, transforms, and communicates. In its rhythm, touch, and reflection, the mind perceives the persistence of human endeavor, even in absence. Through this meditative engagement, water becomes a bridge between what was and what is remembered, carrying the quiet testimony of vanished buildings softly across streets, courtyards, and landscapes. Beneath conscious thought lies a subtler landscape, a realm where intuition and instinct guide action, perception, and understanding. These faculties are not merely personal. They are accumulated, inherited over countless generations, shaped by survival, observation, and experience. Imagine a quiet instinct rising in a moment of uncertainty, a decision made without deliberation, or a sudden insight into the right course of action. These subtle promptings may be echoes of older humanity, patterns of perception and response encoded across time, residing within the very structure of mind and body. Intuition is a bridge between the visible and the invisible. It is the mind's quiet compass, informed by both experience and inherited patterns of thought. Ancient humans faced challenges that required rapid understanding, subtle observation, and creative solutions. These solutions, repeated over generations, shaped the instincts that now guide us in unexpected ways. A careful step, a sudden awareness of danger, or a creative leap may arise not only from personal memory, but from inherited cognition, a subtle resonance with decisions, patterns, and insights refined over millennia. Instinct, too, carries the weight of ancestry. The impulses that alert us to danger, guide curiosity, or shape social interaction are not isolated phenomena. They are the product of countless generations learning, observing, and adapting. When the mind feels compelled toward an action without apparent reason, it may be tapping into ancestral knowledge encoded in perception, sensation, and habit. These are the quiet continuities of human experience, soft echoes of patterns once critical to survival, now shaping creativity, empathy, and intuition in subtle, profound ways. Even complex thought is influenced by inherited intuition. Problem-solving, pattern recognition, and moral judgment are guided by frameworks developed over generations. Ancient humans learned to anticipate environmental shifts, recognize relationships, and predict consequences, all of which honed mental structures that survive in unconscious cognition. When a modern mind arrives at insight seemingly unbidden, it is possible that it is drawing upon the cumulative experience of older civilizations, the quiet architecture of reasoning and perception encoded in the human mind. There is a poetic rhythm to this inheritance. Just as rivers carve channels over centuries, so too do ancestral instincts carve pathways in thought, guiding perception, decision-making, and creativity. The flow is gentle, subtle, and often unnoticed, yet it shapes the way we engage with the world, the patterns we follow, and the intuitions we trust. To sense this is to feel a deep continuity, to recognize that life is not lived in isolation, but as part of a long chain of observation, experience, and understanding. Inherited instincts are not static. They interact with culture, ritual, and environment. The gestures passed down through habit, the alignments encoded in ritual, and the rhythms of attention observed in nature all refine these subtle faculties. Instinct and intuition are cultivated not only through personal experience, but through interaction with the world and the echo of previous generations' understanding. The mind, quiet and attentive, can perceive this interplay, sensing both personal and ancestral resonance in every choice and perception. Emotion, too, carries the imprint of ancestry. Responses of fear, curiosity, empathy, and wonder are shaped by patterns observed over countless lifetimes. The reactions of older humanity, encoded in the neural, biological, and psychological frameworks we inherit, continue to shape experience in subtle ways. When awe arises at a sunset, when caution guides a step on uncertain ground, when creative insight emerges spontaneously, the mind participates in a lineage of perception, linking present consciousness to the intuition and awareness of those who lived long before. There is calm in acknowledging this inheritance. The mind can rest in the awareness that many decisions, many insights, and many emotional responses are guided not solely by immediate circumstance, but by the quiet persistence of human experience over millennia. Instinct and intuition become companions, gentle guides, and sources of reassurance, connecting the listener to the subtle, continuous thread of older humanity, woven into perception and thought. Even in moments of uncertainty or doubt, inherited intuition offers guidance. Patterns once learned and encoded across generations can surface unexpectedly, shaping choice, creativity, and understanding. The mind, attuned to these echoes, senses continuity and stability, a gentle hum that underlies conscious reasoning. This awareness fosters serenity, wonder, and trust in the mind's own latent wisdom, a wisdom that is collective as well as personal, temporal as well as timeless. As the listener drifts deeper into this meditative awareness, instinct and intuition become portals to reflection. They are reminders that human cognition is not limited to the immediate or the conscious. Each subtle perception, each unbidden insight, is an invitation to recognize the persistence of older humanity, to sense the continuity of experience, and to rest in the quiet knowledge that life, thought, and creativity are woven across generations. In this serene recognition, the mind prepares to move toward the next layer of reflection, the hidden legacy of knowledge in culture, science, and shared human understanding, waiting patiently to be perceived, felt, and absorbed. Civilizations leave traces far beyond monuments, tools, or written records. They imprint themselves subtly in the rhythms of society, the organization of space, and the invisible logic that shapes daily life. Streets that follow ancient paths, cities that rise on the same sites for centuries, and patterns of governance or commerce. These are all echoes of older frameworks of understanding, silent lessons that continue to guide human behavior. Even when names, rulers, and events are forgotten, this is true. Consider the alignment of ancient cities, streets, and plazas, often following patterns dictated by rivers, winds, or celestial bodies, reveal a sophisticated understanding of environment, utility, and human behavior. These designs were not random. They were practical, symbolic, and anticipatory, intended to guide movement, social interaction, and ritual practice. Walking through such spaces today, even unaware of the original intention, one participates in a continuum of design, sensing the logic and FO. Civilizations also leave enduring patterns in agriculture and resource management. Terraces, irrigation channels, and communal storage reflect an intricate understanding of land, climate, and sustenance. The organization of these systems embodies lessons in patience, observation, and adaptation, lessons that persist quietly in the landscape long after the people who built them have vanished. In contemplating these arrangements, the mind recognizes the persistence of collective intelligence, the way no. Art and symbolism, too, carry subtle instruction. Murals, sculptures, and motifs encode aesthetic values, cosmologies, and social priorities, reflecting not only what was known but how it was understood. Even if the meaning is partially lost, the form conveys rhythm, proportion, and intent. The observer, attuned to these signals, can sense the continuity of thought, the careful calibration of action and perception that inform daily life. There is a quiet meditation in absorbing these patterns, or really, language, ritual, and custom encode additional layers of memory. Proverbs, songs, ceremonial actions, and societal norms are all vessels carrying distilled understanding. These intangible legacies preserve ethical reasoning, ecological insight, and social cohesion, allowing knowledge to persist even in the absence of tangible artifacts. To observe these practices, even reflectively, is to sense the continuity of human thought, the gentle pulse of wisdom that underlies cultural evolution. The lessons of civilization are often most apparent in what they leave unspoken. Rules governing social behavior, intuitive understandings of space, and tacit knowledge embedded in daily practice persist without conscious effort. They are absorbed by participation, repetition, and observation, silently shaping perception and choice. In this, the continuity of human experience becomes palpable. One feels the soft imprint of countless lives that shaped environment, expectation, and understanding long before. Even the collapse of civilizations teaches quiet wisdom. Ruins, abandoned structures, and faded inscriptions speak of resilience, hubris, adaptation, and failure. They remind the observer of the impermanence of systems and the need for balance between human ambition and natural forces. These lessons are subtle yet profound, shaping perception of risk, foresight, and the delicate interplay between society and environment. In contemplating these echoes, the mind is invited to reflect on continuity and imp. Civilizations also leave legacies in the realm of knowledge and technology. Innovations in mathematics, astronomy, construction, and medicine, whether preserved in writing or transmitted orally, demonstrate a cumulative intelligence that informs subsequent generations. Even when partially forgotten, fragments of these discoveries guide new solutions, offering pathways through which human understanding advances. The mind, quiet and attentive, may perceive the invisible scaffolding of wisdom upon which Kant. There is a poetic rhythm in recognizing the silent lessons of civilization. Each generation observes, adapts, and transmits, creating a chain of knowledge and intuition that links the present to the past. Structures, rituals, landscapes, and artifacts are the language of this continuum, readable not only through formal study, but through contemplative attention. By attuning to these rhythms, the listener senses a profound continuity, a soft hum of wisdom woven through the choices, actions, and innovation. Even unnoticed patterns carry instruction. The way a community organizes space, distributes resources, or negotiates social norms may reveal solutions refined over centuries. These lessons are often absorbed unconsciously, influencing perception, decision-making, and creativity without conscious recognition. In this awareness, the mind rests in a quiet meditation on continuity, sensing the invisible architecture of human experience and recognizing that civilization is more than monuments or texts. It is. As the listener drifts deeper into this reflection, the silent lessons of civilization emerge as a guide to understanding not only the past, but also the present self. They are reminders that human perception, creativity, and intelligence are interconnected across time, that the mind inherits capacities shaped by countless lives, and that even in seeming isolation, we participate in a continuum of understanding. Awareness of this continuity fosters calm, wonder, and a gentle sense of belonging within them. In this meditative state, the listener rests in the quiet resonance of civilization's past, sensing that knowledge, wisdom, and ingenuity persist in structures, rituals, and landscapes. The mind is prepared to move forward into the next layer of reflection. The subtle, often invisible ways memory, culture, and cognition intertwine to preserve the essence of humanity across generations. A continuum waiting to be felt, sensed, and understood in both mind and world. Knowledge is rarely lost entirely. Even when civilizations fade, texts crumble, or languages disappear, the essence of discovery persists, encoded in culture, habit, and the evolving mind. Science, art, and philosophy are vessels through which understanding travels, often hidden beneath layers of interpretation or obscured by the passage of time. Consider a principle discovered centuries ago, now embedded in practice, instinct, or intuition. Though its origin may be forgotten, its effect continues shaping perception, decision-making, and creative thought. In this quiet persistence, the listener senses a continuity that spans both mind and civilization, a subtle web linking the present to the ingenuity of the past. Culture itself is a repository of hidden knowledge. Songs, stories, and rituals preserve observations about the natural world, social behavior, and moral reasoning, often encoded in metaphor, rhythm, or symbolic action. A myth may contain insights into environmental cycles, human psychology, or communal survival strategies. A dance or ceremonial movement may convey lessons about timing, balance, or coordination. These forms, repeated and internalized across generations, transmit understanding without requiring conscious analysis. The listener, attuned to the layers of meaning, begins to sense the quiet intelligence embedded in human tradition, a wisdom that persists even when its original explanation is obscured. Science, too, carries hidden legacies. Every principle, experiment, or formula is built upon the discoveries of those who came before. The knowledge preserved in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology is cumulative, layered, and often invisible in its influence. When we observe the behavior of matter, the motion of planets, or the flow of energy, we engage not only with contemporary understanding, but with the insights of countless minds who explored, tested, and refined these ideas over centuries. The mind, reflective and still, can feel this continuity, sensing the quiet presence of older humanity in every insight and observation. Hidden knowledge is often subtle, residing in the spaces between explicit instruction and lived experience. It shapes perception, intuition, and reasoning, influencing how we approach problems, interpret patterns, and navigate complexity. Consider the techniques of craftsmanship, the intuitive use of tools, or the development of mental models. Each reflects lessons accumulated over generations. Even when the original rationale is forgotten, these insights persist in form and function, guiding action in ways that are felt more than consciously understood. The mind, aware and contemplative, can sense this transmission, absorbing wisdom that is both ancient and immediately practical. There is a poetic elegance in recognizing hidden knowledge. It exists in silence as much as in spoken word, in observation as much as in instruction. A formula on a chalkboard, a rhythm in a folk song, or the design of a bridge may all carry embedded insight, quietly directing thought, shaping creativity, and preserving understanding. The listener, attuned to these echoes, feels a subtle resonance, a connection to the continuum of human intelligence that stretches beyond time and geography. In this awareness, knowledge becomes less a static possession and more a living, flowing presence, accessible through attention, reflection, and intuition. Even mistakes and failed experiments contribute to hidden knowledge. Errors recorded in tradition, trial, and observation serve as lessons for the future. A collapsed structure, a miscalculated formula, or a story of hubris may contain guidance, shaping reasoning and anticipation. Civilization, in preserving both success and failure, encodes a broader wisdom that transcends any individual life. The mind, receptive to these subtle teachings, begins to perceive patterns not only of achievement, but of caution, resilience, and adaptation, sensing the layered intelligence of human history in both triumph and misstep. Hidden knowledge often flows through analogy, metaphor, and practice. Observing nature, reflecting on patterns, and translating experience into technique or ritual embeds understanding in forms that endure. Mathematics mimics natural patterns, architecture echoes environmental logic, and art conveys abstract principles. In each case, insight is preserved in practice as much as an explicit record. The mind, quietly attuned, perceives these connections, feeling the invisible architecture of understanding that unites observation, culture, and reason across generations. There is calm in realizing that this hidden knowledge is not lost to time, but folded into human consciousness, experience, and behavior. Every act of creation, every decision informed by intuition, and every perception of pattern carries forward traces of older insight. Even unexamined habits, unconscious reasoning, and subtle intuitions are shaped by the accumulation of human exploration and discovery. The listener senses that thought itself is a vessel of memory, carrying the intelligence of the past into the present and into each moment of awareness. Reflection on hidden knowledge fosters both humility and wonder. It reveals that human understanding is cumulative, that perception and insight are guided by layers of experience beyond conscious control, and that each mind participates in a web of intelligence stretching across generations. The quiet resonance of this awareness encourages stillness, patience, and curiosity, creating a meditative space in which the listener can feel connected to the enduring pulse of human cognition and creativity. As the mind drifts through this contemplation, hidden knowledge becomes a subtle guide, inviting reflection on the continuity of thought, culture, and observation. It is a reminder that understanding is not merely individual but collective, cumulative, and often invisible. In this gentle recognition, the listener rests in the awareness of enduring insight, sensing that every question explored, every pattern perceived, and every creative impulse is touched by the quiet presence of older humanity, patiently woven into the continuum of discovery and imagination. The mind is both vessel and bridge, carrying within it the echoes of countless generations, the subtle currents of observation, discovery, and imagination. Each thought, intuition, and moment of reflection is informed not only by immediate experience, but by the accumulation of human understanding folded across time. In quiet contemplation, the listener may sense this bridge extending from the present consciousness into the distant past, tracing a lineage of thought, perception, and creativity that links every mind to those that came before. Memory, instinct, and intuition all contribute to this continuity. They are the channels through which knowledge and experience flow silently across generations. A moment of insight, a pattern recognized without conscious reasoning, or a sudden understanding of complex relationships may arise not only from personal observation, but from the inherited intelligence of ancestors. The mind, attentive and meditative, becomes aware of these quiet inheritances, sensing that human thought is a living continuum, a river of cognition stretching backward and forward across time. The bridge of the mind is both subtle and profound. In dreaming, imagining, or reflecting, the mind traverses landscapes of knowledge constructed long before the present. It is in this internal journey that the echoes of older civilizations, the lessons embedded in ritual and artifact, and the hidden knowledge of culture and science converge. The mind becomes a vessel in which past understanding can be felt, perceived, and gently explored, allowing the present consciousness to rest in awareness of continuity, depth, and connection. Even the most ordinary acts of perception are infused with the legacy of older minds. Recognizing a pattern in nature, understanding a social dynamic, or solving a practical problem is rarely the product of isolated thought. Each of these moments draws upon structures refined over generations, accumulated insights embedded in cognition, intuition, and sensory perception. The mind, attuned to this subtle inheritance, senses that knowledge is never truly individual, but always part of a larger web of human experience. The mind also acts as a translator, transforming echoes of the past into relevance for the present. Ancient knowledge, whether preserved in tool, ritual, or theory, is reinterpreted in light of contemporary understanding. In this process, the listener becomes aware that cognition is a dynamic bridge. It connects temporal layers of insight while simultaneously shaping perception, creativity, and action in the now. Through this awareness, the mind rests in calm wonder at its own capacity to unify the threads of human thought across time. Creativity itself is a manifestation of this bridge. Every work of art, every scientific insight, every act of imagination draws upon both personal experience and the accumulated knowledge of those who came before. Inspiration may arise as if from nowhere, yet it is shaped by patterns embedded in cognition and culture, inherited across generations. In the stillness of reflection, the listener perceives these moments of insight not as isolated sparks, but as the resonant outcome of a mind connected to a continuum of human thought and creativity. Emotion, too, travels across this bridge. Feelings of awe, curiosity, empathy, and wonder are informed by instinct, ritual, and shared human experience. When the heart responds to a natural scene, a melody, or a narrative, it resonates with echoes of countless humans who have experienced similar sensations, felt similar delight, and cultivated similar understanding. The mind, sensitive to this continuity, senses that emotional experience is itself a bridge, linking one consciousness to another across time, carrying the silent resonance of human life forward. The mind's bridge also spans the unseen, ideas and possibilities that may never have been realized in material form. Hypotheses untested, experiments, and conceptual explorations linger in thought, shaping intuition and perception. These invisible traces of intellectual curiosity and daring imagination are as real as tangible artifacts, guiding the mind in contemplation, problem-solving, and creative expression. In meditative awareness, the listener senses the subtle influence of ideas that may have originated centuries ago, persisting quietly within the architecture of cognition. There is profound calm in acknowledging the mind as a bridge. It allows the present self to inhabit a larger continuum, one in which knowledge, culture, intuition, and creativity are not confined to a single lifetime. The awareness of this connectivity fosters serenity and wonder, offering reassurance that consciousness participates in something greater than its immediate boundaries. In this meditative state, the mind rests, floating gently in the flow of human thought and perception across time. As the listener drifts deeper into reflection, the mind as a bridge invites both stillness and exploration. It is simultaneously a vessel of memory and a pathway for imagination, linking the echoes of older humanity to contemporary awareness. In this quiet resonance, the listener feels the continuity of civilization, intuition, ritual, and insight, sensing the subtle threads that bind past to present, thought to action, and human life to its own legacy. The mind's bridge is ultimately a source of reassurance. It reminds the listener that no discovery, insight, or creative act exists in isolation. Every perception, intuition, and inspiration is shaped by an intricate web of prior understanding, a continuum of experience reaching back through centuries of human endeavor. In this awareness, the mind rests in calm confidence, attuned to the subtle currents of knowledge, emotion, and insight that persist across time, gently guiding perception, thought, and imagination. In this meditative space, the mind floats, aware of its own capacity to connect, preserve, and transmit the essence of humanity. It becomes both vessel and pathway, carrying echoes of older civilizations, guiding the present consciousness, and preparing the listener to move forward into the final layers of reflection. The synthesis of memory, culture, and human experience into a quiet awareness of continuity, belonging, and the enduring pulse of life itself. Memory is more than recollection. It is the thread that weaves past, present, and future into a continuous tapestry. It exists not only in individual minds, but across communities, societies, and civilizations, encoded in ritual, language, artifact, and habit. Even when specific events fade from conscious awareness, their influence persists, shaping behavior, perception, and understanding. Imagine memory as a river flowing quietly beneath the surface of life, carrying traces of countless generations, guiding thought and intuition, and linking the present to the echoes of older humanity. Individual memory, though intimate, is inseparable from collective memory. Every experience is colored by inherited knowledge, societal patterns, and cultural expectations. Stories told, songs sung, and gestures repeated across generations all contribute to a living archive of human understanding. This archive is subtle, often unnoticed, yet deeply influential. In quiet reflection, the listener senses the gentle presence of this continuity, realizing that every thought, intuition, and emotion is shaped not only by personal experience, but by the accumulated resonance of countless minds before. Artifacts and objects serve as anchors for memory, preserving fragments of understanding and intent. A simple tool, a ceremonial object, or a fragment of architecture is more than material. It carries embedded cognition, practice, and observation. These tangible traces, when engaged with mindfully, awaken recognition of processes, choices, and insights long past. Memory persists not just in written record, but in the form, function, and subtle design of human creation, allowing the mind to connect with rituals and practices encode memory in repetition. The gestures of daily life, ceremonial movements, and patterns of observation are all vessels carrying knowledge across time. Even when the original purpose is forgotten, the form continues to guide behavior, thought, and perception. This continuity demonstrates that memory is not fragile. It is resilient, adaptable, and often invisible. The listener, attuned to this resonance, senses that civilization's lessons, creativity, and understanding are preserved. Memory is also encoded in language. Words, proverbs, songs, and narratives carry layered meanings, embedding insights about environment, society, and morality. Even metaphors and allegories preserve observation and understanding, offering guidance to those who listen carefully. Through language, memory flows silently, shaping perception, reasoning, and imagination, linking present consciousness to a vast network of cultural and experiential knowledge. In meditative awareness, the mind becomes a vessel. Instinct and intuition are quiet carriers of memory. They guide perception, decision-making, and creativity in ways often unnoticed, reflecting the cumulative experience of countless ancestors. A sudden insight, a careful observation, or a moment of caution may arise not from immediate reasoning, but from inherited patterns of understanding honed over generations. In this way, memory persists not only in artifacts, rituals, and language, but in the very architecture of perception and thought, shaping civilizations themselves are repositories of memory. Urban layouts, agricultural systems, artistic traditions, and scientific discoveries preserve knowledge across generations. Even when names, dates, and explicit instructions are forgotten, the structures remain, transmitting lessons about survival, observation, and adaptation. Memory, in this sense, is not personal but collective, embedded in environment, culture, and technology. The listener, reflecting quietly, senses the persistence of this continuity. Failures and collapses contribute to the continuity of memory as well. Lessons embedded in what did not endure, the ruins, the mistakes, the forgotten experiments, offer subtle guidance to those who perceive them. The mind, attuned to this resonance, absorbs wisdom not only from success, but from the quiet traces of human missteps. In this meditative reflection, memory is holistic, encompassing triumph and failure alike, shaping insight, intuition, and imagination across time. There is a poetic rhythm in the continuity of memory. Each generation observes, learns, and transmits, creating patterns that persist long after the individual is gone. Memory flows through tangible objects, rituals, language, instinct, and culture, connecting minds across centuries. The listener, resting in awareness, begins to feel the quiet pulse of this continuum, sensing that consciousness is part of a vast, enduring network of experience, reflection, and understanding. Memory is ultimately a bridge linking individual perception to collective wisdom. It is a silent teacher, a guide, and a repository of human experience. In attuning to this continuity, the mind rests in calm wonder, perceiving that every thought, action, and intuition participates in an unbroken thread of understanding. Memory is not static. It flows, adapts, and resonates, inviting the listener to rest in its gentle rhythm, aware of the persistence of knowledge, creativity, and insight across time. As the mind drifts deeper into this awareness, the continuity of memory becomes a space of serenity. The listener senses that human understanding, emotion, and intuition are not confined to individual lifetimes, but extend across generations, preserved in culture, thought, and practice. This gentle recognition fosters a calm sense of belonging within the vast tapestry of human experience, preparing the consciousness to explore the next layer, the subtle inheritance of consciousness itself, the shared awa. Consciousness, like memory, may stretch far beyond the confines of a single life. It is the quiet river in which thought, perception, and awareness flow, carrying subtle traces of experience, intuition, and reflection from one generation to another. Imagine the mind not as an isolated vessel, but as part of a continuum where the echoes of older consciousness gently shape present awareness. Thoughts arise, intuition guides, and emotions resonate in ways that may reflect patterns, choices, and insights accumulated across countless lifetimes, silently linking human minds across the ages. This continuity of consciousness is subtle, often imperceptible, yet profoundly influential. When a sudden insight emerges, when instinct guides a decision, or when empathy and understanding arise spontaneously, there is a sense of connection beyond immediate experience. These moments may be echoes of older cognition, impressions of patterns refined over generations, or traces of a collective awareness that survives the passage of time. In still reflection, the listener senses that consciousness itself may be a bridge, carrying forward the essence of human perception and understanding. Even the most fleeting awareness may carry resonance from the past. Dreams, intuition, and creative impulses often emerge from a place that feels both intimate and expansive, private and universal. In these moments, consciousness seems to reach beyond personal experience, touching the shared cumulative awareness of humanity. The mind, calm and attentive, becomes aware of its own participation in this continuum, sensing the quiet persistence of thought and perception across generations, a gentle reminder that human experience is woven into a larger fabric of awareness. Consciousness is also a vessel for emotion, shaping how we feel, respond, and interpret the world. Empathy, wonder, fear, and curiosity are not solely products of immediate circumstance. They carry the imprint of older experiences, reflecting the emotional landscapes of ancestors and the collective responses of communities. The mind, attuned to this resonance, senses that emotion is both personal and inherited, flowing quietly from past awareness into present perception, shaping action and imagination in ways both subtle and profound. Language, culture, and ritual provide pathways for consciousness to persist. Words, stories, songs, and ceremonies encode ways of thinking, feeling, and observing, allowing insights and awareness to endure beyond individual lifetimes. Even when explicit meaning is lost, the structures of expression continue to influence thought, shaping cognition and perception. In this meditative reflection, the listener recognizes that consciousness is not confined to the immediate mind, but extends through cultural continuity, preserved in rhythm, story, and shared experience. The inheritance of consciousness is also evident in the intuitive understanding of human behavior and natural systems. Patterns of cooperation, social structure, and environmental awareness are often internalized without conscious instruction, guided instead by subtle perception, observation, and instinct. These capacities, honed over millennia, carry traces of older awareness, shaping the way humans navigate relationships, interpret patterns, and respond to the world. The mind, reflective and still, senses this quiet guidance, recognizing that human consciousness is deeply intertwined with the collective intelligence of generations past. There is a poetic dimension to this continuity. Consciousness, like a river, flows unbroken, touching mind after mind, life after life. Each awareness is both distinct and connected, carrying fragments of older insight while contributing to the ongoing evolution of perception and understanding. In this rhythm, the listener may feel a profound calm, sensing that thought, intuition, and emotion are not isolated phenomena, but part of a living temporal continuum. Awareness itself becomes a meditation, a quiet recognition of connection, persistence, and resonance. Even challenges, failures, and forgotten knowledge contribute to this inheritance. The wisdom embedded in past mistakes, misjudgments, or abandoned paths informs present perception, shaping caution, creativity, and reflection. Consciousness, attentive to these subtle lessons, integrates them seamlessly, allowing the present mind to navigate complexity with guidance distilled over countless generations. In this gentle awareness, the listener senses the depth and resilience of human understanding, the quiet threads of experience that persist across time. The possibility of consciousness spanning generations offers a sense of continuity and belonging. It suggests that every moment of awareness, every act of thought, and every emotional experience is part of a larger shared process. Individual minds are not isolated islands, but nodes in a vast network of cognition and perception, linked by the subtle inheritance of attention, insight, and reflection. In meditative reflection, the listener feels this continuity, experiencing a gentle harmony that reassures, comforts, and inspires. As the mind drifts further into this awareness, consciousness itself becomes a space of serenity. The listener perceives that awareness is simultaneously personal and collective, temporal and timeless, shaped by experience, yet connected to a vast continuum of human thought and feeling. This recognition fosters calm, wonder, and a soft sense of awe, as the mind rests in the quiet understanding that each thought, intuition, and insight is touched by the subtle presence of those who came before, gently guiding perception and imagination. Consciousness across generations is ultimately a meditation on the enduring nature of human awareness. It reminds the listener that thought, perception, and emotion are not confined to individual experience, but flow through a continuum of intelligence, observation, and creativity. In this stillness, the mind rests, sensing its place within the vast, unbroken web of human understanding, attuned to the persistent echoes of older awareness and prepared to move into the final reflections on belonging, continuity, and the poetic resonance of humanity itself. Humanity is not merely a series of isolated lives, but a continuum, an unbroken thread of thought, emotion, and creativity weaving through time. Each life contributes to this delicate fabric, Each choice and insight a thread connecting past to present, present to future. In quiet reflection, the listener senses this continuity, feeling that the pulse of older humanity continues to resonate within consciousness, culture, and the natural rhythms of life. The awareness of this thread offers calm reassurance. Each generation inherits these legacies, absorbing lessons, intuitions, and insights shaped over millennia. The mind, attentive and meditative, perceives that this inheritance is not static. It flows, adapts, and evolves, allowing humanity to persist, transform, and flourish even in the face of impermanence. Memory, culture, and consciousness converge in the eternal thread. The rituals of older societies, the inventions of past minds, and the patterns of behavior refined through centuries all contribute. The thread of humanity also carries emotion, the subtle currents of awe, empathy, curiosity, and wonder that have animated life for millennia. Each feeling, though immediate, is connected to a lineage of emotional experience informed by the joys, fears, and reflections of those who came before. In this recognition, the mind rests, attuned to the gentle resonance of shared human consciousness, sensing that the experience of life is both individual and collective, personal and timeless. Even failure and impermanence contribute to the continuity of humanity. The ruins of cities, the remnants of ideas, and the echoes of forgotten civilizations are all part of the fabric, carrying lessons in resilience, humility, and adaptation. The mind, calm and reflective, absorbs these lessons as quiet guidance, aware that each misstep and success alike has shaped the path of human understanding. In this meditative state, the listener perceives continuity not as rigid repetition, but as a flexible and due. Knowledge, both explicit and hidden, travels along this thread. The discoveries of older civilizations, the subtle wisdom encoded in culture, and the accumulated intuition of countless minds form a bridge across generations. Science, art, and philosophy, though they evolve and transform, carry traces of insight that survive the passage of time. The mind, gently receptive, feels these echoes, sensing that awareness itself is shaped by continuity, that every observation, creative impulse, and act of reflecting. The eternal thread is also present in instinct and intuition, the quiet guidance embedded in human perception and behavior. These patterns, refined over millennia, link the individual to ancestral understanding. Moments of sudden clarity, creative insight, or moral awareness may arise as if spontaneously, yet they are shaped by the subtle currents of inherited cognition. The listener, meditating on this awareness, experiences a serene acknowledgement that the mind is both personal and collective, carrying. There is a poetic symmetry in recognizing the thread of humanity. It flows through every choice, every perception, every act of imagination. Each life adds depth, color, and rhythm to the ongoing tapestry, ensuring that knowledge, insight, and creativity endure. The mind, attuned to this pattern, rests in calm reflection, sensing that no consciousness exists in isolation, and that even the smallest thought or gesture contributes to a continuum far larger than any single lifetime. The eternal thread invites contemplation of belonging and purpose. It reminds the listener that life is not fragmented, but interconnected, that awareness, creativity, and empathy are shared across time. Each individual participates in a dialogue with countless predecessors, a conversation conducted in intuition, memory, and the subtle inheritance of culture and knowledge. In this recognition, the mind finds solace, a gentle certainty that consciousness, experience, and insight persist, carried forward by. As the listener drifts deeper into this meditative awareness, the eternal thread becomes a space of serenity and wonder. The mind rests in quiet appreciation of continuity, sensing the persistence of human thought, feeling, and creativity across generations. Awareness itself feels expansive yet intimate, as if each breath and perception is both a reflection of the past and a contribution to the future. In this state, the listener experiences a profound sense of connection, belonging, and calm, a final act. The eternal thread is ultimately a meditation on time, memory, and consciousness. It affirms that humanity's essence, curiosity, wonder, creativity, and reflection is not limited by individual lifetimes, but persists across centuries. Each thought, each feeling, each subtle insight contributes to this ongoing flow, a rhythm that links the listener to the vast continuum of human experience. In this awareness, the mind rests, floating gently within the unbroken fabric of existence, attuned to the quiet resonance